minutes. Joining us right now on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline, though, he says a lot of things, and they're pretty profound. Zac Jackson joins us from The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter, @AkronJackson. Hello, Zach.
Good morning, boys.
It's wonderful to speak to you. Boy, you got a lot of people's dander up for your comments about the quarterback on Friday on the Zach Gelb Show.
A lot of people listen to the Zac Jackson show, or what?
Well, a lot of them found him on the internet. A lot of
yeah, I think Yahoo wrote a whole article about that interview. Slow news day.
It is getting into June by the time that article was written, and now we are in June. There are some slow news days, my friend.
Yeah, it's only so much we can talk about Tyler Hero's brother signing with Ohio State.
I just dropped the kids off at basketball camp, and that's what we were talking about.
God, you two are
I thought, man,
sickos.
that's much more exciting than talking about OTAs that we haven't seen for 6 days. But anyway, glad to be here.
You two are sickos. My God. So, yeah.
Hey, next year, Ken, I can help you get the Ohio State coach on the radio.
Well, he was more than willing to join one half of us on a private phone call to yell at him, but
I was not talking about that one.
Oh,
or the
sorry. Sorry about that.
I know who you're getting at.
My bad.
Yeah, anyway, you guys want to talk football? Is there any football going on?
Listen to this guy. All right, so you said Dylan Gabriel doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. People made of it what they will. Do you want to walk that back, clarify, double down? What are your thoughts?
Why would I walk that back?
I don't know. I'm just giving you the option. That's all.
Yeah, no. Right now we're out there and we've seen so little that most of what, first of all, there's no real judgment, right? Most of what we think about this situation is probably based on what we thought coming in and what we've done in the past, and it makes sense that Flacco would be ahead because he's way more experienced than all these guys, and he's played in this offense. And in this environment where everybody's in shorts, he throws rockets. Like, he still has the arm. And in 2 viewings of rookie minicamp and 1 open OTA, I think there's a clear best thrower, and I think there's a clear 4th best thrower. So, I think there's a couple things that are, I think most of this is uncertain, but amid the uncertainty, there's a certainty, right? Like, this could go a number of different ways is one. And 2, this is 2 different competitions, Ken. It's Flacco versus Pickett. Neither of these rookies, barring something crazy, is going to be anywhere near ready in September. So does history say they might have to be? Yes. Do we have any idea how it's going to go with the team's record and who plays and what else becomes available or how it goes? No. But this is Flacco versus Pickett, and then it's the 2 rookies. I guess you can safely say against each other because this is a situation the team chose, but mostly just against being a rookie quarterback, getting used to things, trying to maximize your reps, and put yourself in the plan. Because ever since that day, that afternoon when Shador was drafted, everyone has sort of lost sight of the fact that their strongest quarterback statement and investment was probably gaining that extra first-round pick for next year.
Does it matter at all in the scheme of things that Dylan Gabriel was taken in the 3rd round?
It's a great question, Anthony. And I mean, when you look at this situation right now, he is probably the one of the 4 to whom they have the most committed, right? Because Pickett and Flacco together, their guarantees don't add up to what a 3rd-tier quarterback makes today, and they're both only under contract for this year, which I guess the team and the fan base would love for that to be important because you'd love for one of them to win the job and play well enough for that to matter, right? And have like a relevant season. So, yeah, I think it does matter to an extent, but I also think when you start wading down that road with so much uncertainty right now, you could say that all they did was undercut him by taking another quarterback and taking reps away. And, I think this OTA week is really important for all these guys. I think next week's minicamp is super important in terms of anything that's important in June football. And I think when they go to Carolina in August, it's going to be the biggest story in the NFL. But that's from an outside perspective is mostly going to be about the quarterback in the 5th round. But for this team, I mean, by then, I think the reps and the rotations will matter. I really don't think they mean much at all right now.
Zac Jackson joining us here from The Athletic. So, I mean, Joe Flacco's 40. He's asked about his age every time they get a chance to talk to him. If he plays and he plays a significant amount and they're like a middling team, are we wasting our time with Joe Flacco?
No. The reason I have thought, and I'm not sure of this, but the reason I have thought that he would be the favorite is that I thought in training camp, which we're not there yet, that he would just, I don't know how to say this without saying a bad word if we were talking on the phone and not on the radio. Like, the way I think he will command the meeting room and the huddle and get guys in the right place and do things that they frankly haven't had for the last 3 training camps is why I think you'll have it. So in that way, Ken, he has value. It's almost like going all the way back to 2018 when they spent a 3rd rounder on Tyrod, even though they knew damn well they were taking Baker at number 1, because you can't do enough for that room to stabilize and solidify that room, especially how it's gone, right? So I think Joe Flacco absolutely has value. And the more I've thought about it, since it was kind of a surprise signing, it came on, a Friday morning, the week before the draft, the more I've realized that's an important signing. And where it goes from here, I don't know. In August, if somebody loses a quarterback, somebody will probably call the Browns. Everybody will be watching it for some reason, some laughing, some morbid reasons, some wanting to know how this goes. And the other thing why I'm not crowning anyone is 2 years ago, Kenny Pickett was outstanding in the preseason. I mean, he was so good, they were going to build a 4th river over there and name it after him, right? And then the real game started and he was back to being Kenny Pickett. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen this August, I don't think anybody knows.
Zac Jackson with us. Do you think we've gone a little too far in attacking the Browns when PFF has them ranked 32nd in terms of their roster, when you still have Myles Garrett on that roster?
I think that's way off base, but I think it's June, right? I got to do June and July content too. Like when minicamp ends next week, there's 6 weeks. And Anthony, really, it's a completely different reaction, but that is zero different than the last 2 years when people would get on and fight about the ranking list and say the Browns are better than 8th, the Browns are better than 11th. And what did that lead to? So no sane person thinks the Browns have the 32nd most talented roster. And there's probably no sane person that thinks that they're a bottom 5 talent roster. They're closer to the bottom than the top, but that to me was absurd.
Wow, that's some strong stuff there, Zach. I can't believe I'm hearing that. That's some good stuff. Because I heard you last week with Nick and Jonathan, and it was, you are brutally honest to a fault sometimes, because you were saying like, hey, it could end up being the number 1 overall pick, but you think it's more trending in the 5 to 7 win territory this year?
That all depends on the quarterback, and honestly. This is not a deep team, but it's a talented team. If that offensive line stays healthy and plays together, they're going to move some people, right? If they can run the ball a little bit. I'm not convinced this is a top 3 pick at all, or I'm convinced this is not a bottom 3 team, is what I'm trying to say. Because they were so bad at so many things last year that even just being functional, they'll win some games. And I think Joel said it yesterday. They just weren't good enough last year, early in the year, to capitalize on some things and win games. There's a million reasons, but they just weren't good enough. And then at the end, they weren't even trying. Mm-hmm. So in the middle was a functional football team. They scored 1 million and lost to Denver. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat the Ravens. They got embarrassed by the Chargers, who were a playoff team. They were right there. Like, I remember having this discussion with you guys, I think at the trade deadline. Had they just not given away the Giants or the Raiders game, they would have been a playoff contender by number, not by reality, right? Yeah. So, look, it all depends on quarterback, and it all depends on where you are around that trade deadline, which happens to be their bye week, and what they decide, that they have to do. But, I think I picked 5, 11, and 1 when the schedule came out, and I think it's more likely in 4 to 6 than 2 to 4. But I think a lot of things are in play because we just don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback, and if they don't score points early, like, they could be 1 and 6 to start the season.
That ain't no fun. I read your article yesterday afternoon with Joel Bitonio and talking about going back to 2021, those 2 seasons, and how they're going to run their offense. Does that mean that these 4 quarterbacks got to fit in with Kevin Stefanski no matter what, or is there going to be some changes within how they run the system? Because it seemed like they were like, okay, we're going to throw it all out the window for this guy, and then that guy is basically going away, and now they got these 4 other quarterbacks, and it's like, well, we have had the most success when they have been hand in hand with Kevin Stefanski. Not that successful, but it's success.
Yeah, no, I think they have to be, and I think they mostly are, right? I think ultimately what you become on any offense tailors to your quarterback and to your talent and where you want the ball to go. But I think all those guys fit it. I mean, we've seen Flacco do it, but what are Shador's strengths? Why did they probably ultimately take the take the plunge to do it. The kind of throws that he can make. Those are the ones. Pickett has a little bit of mobility. He's got a little bit of ability. It seems to fit there, right? And he's doing all the right things. Like he understands that this is the last year of his rookie deal, and this might be his last chance to be a starter, at least for a long time. So in terms of when you ask around, who's there early? All of them. Who's there late? All of them. You hear the veterans talk on the record, and they all mention Kenny going out of his way to make some sort of relationship with them, or to ask questions, or to bridge that gap between being the new guy and wanting to be the guy. And they're going to need all of them, right? They might ship one of them off. I don't know. Maybe they're. The other thing is, it's probably way more likely that neither of the rookies are close to ready than not at the beginning of the season. But what does that affect? And then does that matter? I don't know. If Flacco plays well and they're like functional in the first part of the season, then they'll be in it.
Well,
if they don't score, then they're not going to win. I just we'll see how it goes.
Well, Zach, this kind of goes back to the thing I asked you about the wasting time with Joe Flacco stuff. I adore Joe, and I know a lot of people do. So let me throw this to you. Like, say because he's 40, so he's not going to have very much of a future at all in the NFL, regardless with the Browns. They got 3 younger guys behind him. I mean, Kenny's going to turn 27, I think, this week or something like that. So these guys are not old. If you have Joe Flacco and somebody's like, hey, we'll give you so-and-so for Joe, it ain't going to be high, and they make a trade with Joe Flacco during training camp, could you lose your team before the season even starts?
Could, and I don't think that Joe would be the one that's traded if that happens. But
who do you think would?
Kenny, I think, is the only one that I think would really have any value.
And they would consider that a win if they got like a 4th back for Kenny when they traded a 5th?
Yeah, that would definitely go on their win for.
You don't think they're getting a 4th at all?
Yeah. Look, when you bring up the thought of potentially wasting time with Joe Flacco, like, that's an interesting point. I think it's worth talking about. But like, the quickest counter to that, Ken, is that, well, aren't they wasting time if Kenny Pickett plays at all? And maybe not. Like I said, maybe he will play better. But based on what we know right now and assume, like, when they made the trade that Monday late afternoon, I was like, okay, like, who's going to be the starter? Because Kenny Pickett is a backup. And they got him for nothing. And the Eagles had him as a Super Bowl winning backup and were willing to give him away for nothing. So nobody else used him as anything but a backup. And Philly didn't even think they needed him as a backup. He makes $2.6 million.
Zach, I saw some people yesterday still crowing somehow about, hey, the Browns still able to find $20 million more cap space with some post-June 1st moves yesterday. Did we all get a little carried away even bothering to talk so much about Andrew Berry and his salary cap manipulation when, they were 3-14 last year. They clearly have not drafted very well, so they haven't had to make the toughest of decisions when it comes to being able to sign their own draft picks, considering their own draft picks weren't really that good over the last 5 years. Cap space and manipulation, has that been something greatly exaggerated?
No, it matters. I would encourage anyone who goes on that page to click over to 2026 and see what some of these cap numbers are for guys who aren't even under contract, and see that the Browns have like 34 players total under contract. That I don't know that number. It's not in front of me right now, but it's a small number. The cap situation is going to matter, and eventually they're going to have to decide on some things. There's some bad contracts on this roster, and there's not enough good young players. And so right now, OTAs and training camp, they need some young players to put themselves in the plans, guys who are cost controlled and guys who are under contract, because that entire interior of the offensive line is up after this year, and David Njoku's up. Your current starting running back, even though you've theoretically replaced him in the draft, is up. Both your veteran quarterbacks are up. So corners 2 and 3 are up. You don't have a safety 2 right now. We don't know of anybody in linebacker. They're all up except for Schlesinger. So, yeah, the cap situation is. I mean, Deshaun Watson's cap number right now for next year is $80 million. So the cap is not healthy, not one bit.
Now, that's not too much if we're in the NBA. Oh, damn it. I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah, $80 million for next year.
Hey, so if Shedeur, we got to be rooting for Shedeur is what you're saying. I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, no, right. One of the rookies, and you need these guys to play. Like, guys on rookie contracts don't make any money, in the grand scheme of the cap. And they pushed all this money ahead for Watson and for the guys around him. And you have an offensive line now of guys that are in their 30s and make a lot of money. And if they play well and you win, then it's worth it. And it's been great investment, and they've invested in it over and over again. But they didn't draft any this year when all these guys are up. So it's kind of a shaky spot going forward. I think I didn't do a good enough job talking about it or writing about it yet, but like DeJuan Jones being healthy, and if he can be your left tackle, like, that's a huge deal, because if he can't be healthy or be your left tackle, you're in big trouble there at a very premium position.
And I know for a fact, I mean, he's not as comfortable as what people wish he was at left tackle. So if he's able to do it, it'd be a glorious thing.
Sure. No, Ken, like, he's a rookie. He's playing right. I think he got like something like 30 snaps with the starters his entire rookie training camp, right? And then all of a sudden, week 2, he was playing. And then he played right all year last year in training camp until they had to move him to left. So yeah, it's an experiment. It's an ongoing process, and just the ability is there. We've all seen it, right? He just has to stay healthy, and then he has to refine it at a very different position.
Zach, thank you so much for the time. We kept you a little bit late because it's so damn good. We appreciate your time. All the best to you. Thank you.
See you guys.
Zac Jackson on the